Hey everybody, it's 9 o'clock and 9 o'clock is with me, Father Warner. Today is Vianney Day. It's the feast of our patron, John Marie Vianney. And the text of today is taken from Matthew chapter 13, verses 54 to 58. And I've entitled today's teaching, Bearing My Soul on Vianney Day. First, let's read the text. He came to his hometown and began to teach the people in their synagogue, so that they were astounded and said, "Where did this man get this wisdom and these deeds of power? Is it not the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary? And are not his brothers James, Joseph, and Simon and Judas? Are not his sisters all with us? Where then did this man get all this?" And they took offense at him. But Jesus said to them, "Prophets are not without honor except in their own country and in their own house." And he did not do many deeds of power there because of their unbelief. The Gospel of the Lord. Now, there are no coincidences. God always has a plan, and he chooses the moment and method that he wants to speak to us. You know, the text of today is his voice speaking to me on a day that I'm called to reflect on the life of our patron, St. John Marie Vianney, the patron of the diocesan clergy, and in particular, the patron of parish priests. Now, in so many ways, this text touches my soul. You know, over the past several years, the Lord has been using me to teach his word. It began first with the written blogs, if you remember, pottypadre.com. I used to write with trepidation, afraid that I might make a mistake in my teachings, wondering what my seminary professors would think, afraid of the criticism. And then came COVID. COVID forced what was written to also be vlogged. So vlogging is what you do on YouTube. Now I had a face to the text that was written, and every word I said was recorded for posterity. One slip, one mistaken line, and I knew that the repercussions would follow. I soon came to realize that it was not my words that flowed in every scripture reflection I wrote, but his words. You know, there were times my fingers flew over the keypad. They could not match the pace of the thoughts that he poured into my head. Words, sentences, ideas, and clever lines were given to me, and given to one who could barely pass his 7th grade math and who had to alter his report card so as to not get a beating at home for failing yet again. And I must tell you, I did get that beating all the same, and got it doubly so for failing as well as changing my report card. Now, I want to say this to you. I am not a clever man. I just had to work harder than everyone else. I grew up in the shadow of a very, very intelligent brother. And to make matters worse, I was a very shy kid who got bullied very often. I am not the extrovert the world thinks I am. I just had to learn to stand up for myself before I was taught to stand up for Christ. I know how weak I am, how frail I am, how short I fall in my Lord's eyes. Yet, he chose me. He chose me for reasons I cannot fathom. His words ring in my ears. "You did not choose me. I chose you. I appointed you to go and to bear fruit." The gospel text of today on the feast of my patron John Vianney gives me consolation. The Lord chose a broken vessel to water his garden. A broken vessel may not carry all the water to its intended source, but being cracked, it drips along the way, giving life to the arid ground below, which was never intended to be watered by man. But life springs where it was never intended to, and that is the work of God, who uses even a crackpot like me to bring life to others. But if Christ was rejected, then why should I expect preferential treatment? Can a servant greater be than his master, Christ the Lord? Words from John chapter 13, verse 15 to 17. We know from the scriptures that Christ was rejected by his very family and the members of his own hometown. They knew who Jesus was, so they asked, "Who does he think he is?" He was labeled, written off, sneered at, based on their limited knowledge of their reality of him. For them, he was the son of a carpenter, a boy from the village. They just could not see God in their midst. Rejection, my dear friends, is part of priestly life. The irony is that most of your congregation love you but never tell you this. If you are lucky, they will tell you how much they will miss you, that on the day your transfer notice kicks in. Yet there are those who will hate you, and they make sure you know it. I have had my share of haters, not entirely because of my human limitations, but more for the causes of truth that I have felt compelled to speak out for and to represent. As a seminarian, I don't think, and I may be wrong, but I don't think my professors thought much of me. I was not one who seemed to walk with the trendy theology of the time. Justice was a hot topic in the seminary back in the 1990s. An option to live in the slums was seen as more worthy of seminary formation than one who chose to live in the hallowed walls for which formation was created. But God does not go with the trends of theology. His message and truth was meant to be eternal. When the moment came for me to stand for the rights of the people who suffered, especially those in Bandra, the Lord gave me a disciple's tongue. He replaced courage where fear ought to have been the normal response. Ironically, I remember I was attacked by my own brother priests, whom I suspect rather pleased the powerful than would petition the cause of the poor. And I bear today no animosity against them. And while I know that some may have, like they did with Jesus, taken offense, others I know asked contemptuously, "Where did this man get all of this?" Prophets are not without honor except in their own country and in their own house. Christ, who experienced rejection, reminds his clergy that while they will be loved by many, they must also be rejected by those very often within their inner circle for standing up for the truth of Christ. When presented by the Emperor Napoleon with the Imperial Order of the Legion of Honor, St. John Vianney refused to accept it. He said, "When I go before my Lord, will I show him these human trifles?" I must admit, my dear friends, that as a young priest, I thought one of those skull caps would fit very well on my head. I hankered for honors and position. It took a friend who looked me in the eye and said, "Warner, you are becoming a career priest." And I want to thank you, my dear Dominique Cerejo, for your honesty. Thank you for saving my priesthood. Thank you for saving my soul. I now know that the Lord did want a cap for me, but it was not the cap that I imagined. I know that he wants me to share in his crown of thorns, for that fits well. And though I have an inkling that this crown will soon be pierced deeper, I also know that he will stand by me in that moment of trial. My prayers today are for my brother priests who are in far-flung mission stations where bread is hard to get and the fear of persecution looms large. We, the members of the clergy who are blessed to minister in cities, in the relative comfort, if not the luxury of our ivory towers, must step out and become the voice for our brother priests who labor in challenging situations, or else we will look like beautiful ships resting in a harbor, but then again, that is not what ships were made for. Christ calls us to speak for the voiceless, to care for the poor, to defend the faith and oppose every false power that be, both within and without the church, and boy, do the ones within the church today abound. You know, this piece which I wrote and which now I share with you was not written or is not being said with malice to anyone, though it may oddly seem so. It is not meant to set me on a pedestal over the rest. It is a reminder to all the members of the clergy that we share in his priesthood, and if we are not rejected like Christ, then it has become painfully clear that we do not stand on his side, but that of the world. Christianity, my dear friends, by its very tenets, stands against the ways of much of this world. The minute you oppose it, you will find yourself carrying a heavy cross as you are led away to be crucified. Finally, I want to apologize to those who I have hurt deliberately and the many, many, many more whom I have offended unknowingly. The brashness of my first years as a young priest hopefully have given way to a more mature approach to the people that God entrusts me with. For me, these 2 years of a sabbatical is an opportunity to sit on the sidelines and to serve without post or position the Lord's flock wherever I may be. Finally, I want to dedicate this video message, this teaching of today, which I hope many of you will share in its entirety, not cut, copy and paste the parts that you agree with, especially if you want to get back at some priest. Don't do that. Share it in its entirety if you agree with this message. I want to dedicate this to the memory of Father Stan Swami, who, though was not a diocesan priest, he was a Jesuit. I'm sure he was very much a priest after God's own heart. May the Church recognize what many of the laity acknowledge, that we were privileged to live at a time when a saint lived in our midst. Thank you for your love, for your affection for me, for your support for my ministry, and most of all, for the children of our home here in Nuve. I know today I will be flooded with many, many messages, as we always are on the feast of John Marie Vianney and then again on Vianney Sunday. Thank you for your messages. I will not be able to respond to each one of them, whether you post it in the comments here today or send me a WhatsApp message. But I thank you for your kindness. I thank you for your love and for your constant support. And to all my parishioners where I have served in the past, the last being St. Stephen's Church, God bless you all. I remember you each day when I pray at Mass and we pray for the saints. I mention the names of the 5 parishes that I served. I mention the names of the saints. And in doing that, you are remembered each day in my prayers. St. Mike, the parish of St. Michael in Mahim, St. Paul in Dada, Our Lady of Mount Carmel's in Bandra, St. Jude in Malad East, and St. Stephen's. And now to this extended family here in Goa. You are always and always will be in my prayers. Thank you, and bye for now.